Okay, so everybody's seen the annoying message that said. So, hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being able to adjust your schedules to attend today's session. It was not by choice that we chose April Fool's Day, but the original meeting that we were to have in March, believe it or not, I was to be doing a National Guard mission over in Moldova. And as Putin decided to do his special military exercise, or whatever he refers to it as, it took a little while of going back and forth whether or not we were still going to go ahead and do our mission. And then ultimately, the mission did get canceled, especially after Moldova got overwhelmed by the refugees exiting Ukraine. So with that in mind, we went ahead and changed the meeting anyway and to today. Little did we know that this would also be the day before the only thing that's going to be occurring tomorrow night at 8 o'clock in the world, apparently. Also, our agenda that we had scheduled, we have some folks that are currently en route to the game. So if you notice, we did have broadband listed as a topic. Nate Denny, fortunately or unfortunately, depending upon your perspective, did get tickets to the game and is currently on his way down to the Superdome. And as I told him, if I had tickets to go, I probably would have canceled ITSB and went to the game as well. So obviously, I don't have tickets, so that's why we're here having the meeting. We've had no new members join us since the last time we've been together, so no need to go through introductions. But what I would like to do is give everybody an opportunity to meet Cherie Givens, who in December came on board as our state's first chief privacy officer. So I don't know if Cherie's on camera or not. Cherie?
Hi, good morning. Yes, I'm still getting my camera set up. I was having a little bit of, excuse me, technical difficulties yesterday that have spilled over into today. Okay. It's very nice to meet everybody, and hopefully I'll have it up here shortly.
Okay, so we have Cherie focusing on a number of privacy issues, and she's a mighty force of one right now. So as we look to probably in the next long session of really talking to the legislature about our privacy program and things we want to do and accomplish, hopefully we can get her augmented a little bit more so she can get a lot of great things done. If you kind of go out to nc.gov, you'll see already her impact in the fact that now we have the privacy notice there. And so as we're going across our websites, it's just that we're doing from a privacy component that we're trying to make a difference and just heighten the awareness and the importance of privacy. Obviously, her and Rob have been working very closely together. They're two sides of a coin when you think about cyber and privacy and how they go hand in hand. So more to follow, and if and when you can get on camera, Cherie, we'll come back to you, and if you want to add any comments, we'll give you that opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks. As you know, the geopolitical situation in Europe has, really increased and heightened the concern around cybersecurity. And of course, the number one question we're all asked is, are we secure? Are we safe? And we all know the answer to that question. But again, we are seeing an uptick, and I won't get into a lot of details. I think Rob will talk a little bit about North Carolina's cyber status a little bit later in the program here. But we are starting to see, I think last week we actually went 13 billion, as in Dr. Evil B and billion mark, as far as security incidents in the course of a week. And I can't recall a time in my year that I'm here where we've been that high. We've normally been averaging around the 11 point something billion mark, and we've kind of been steadily increasing. Interesting to note that as we look at our top talkers, as far as inbound traffic, from a security aspect to us here in North Carolina, we're starting to see a lot more traffic originating from Eastern Europe. Lithuania as an example, the Netherlands as an example. Believe it or not, the Swiss apparently got off neutrality. There's traffic coming from them as well. And of course, we're also seeing China still and the United States as where this traffic's originating from. But it's just interesting to note that we are seeing an uptick from the European countries as well as the events continue to unfold in Ukraine. Also, in the past month, I'm very happy to announce that we got the executive order signed by the governor that formalizes the Joint Cyber Task Force. I think this is a big feather for everyone who's been involved in it. North Carolina is viewed as a national leader when it comes to this type of an activity in an organization. This is very much a comprehensive team effort. It's not just DIT. It's not just our National Guard. It's not just public. It's a whole bunch of individuals and organizations, UNC School of Government. When we look at Nickel Giza and our friends down at the local level, also working with us, it's just a huge effort, and it's just phenomenal that we got this formalization in place. This is also going to probably provide for the foundation as we look at the IIJA cyber funds that are going to be available in North Carolina. There's about 26.4 million and change over 4 federal fiscal years that appears to be allocated to North Carolina for continued cyber inclusion. So we'll go ahead and we're going to be leveraging Nickel Giza as that planning committee. We have to augment it with a couple other organizational elements that CISA requires, but we're going to go ahead and continue to move forward on that. So very grateful for the work, and again, our cybersecurity committee has also been a huge proponent of it. But as I said, the governor was very quick to get that signed, and I'll let Rob talk a little bit more about that down the road here as well. As we talked in the last time we were together in December, we did talk about the fact that we would like to do a new committee to start looking at prioritization of technology projects for the state. And our beloved OSBM director and so Charlie and I had some conversations around that. And yeah, I am hearing an echo, Tina, as well. So I don't know if everyone's muted or not. I can't tell where it's coming from. But Charlie and I have talked about that, and we've spoken across our teams, and we think this would be an excellent way to receive guidance from all of you. So we're looking at the purpose of a committee to develop consistent criteria for prioritizing new state technology projects, enabling the state to utilize the criteria to recommend technology projects to be funded. And again, I say recommend, not approve, but recommend. And advocate for the use of the criteria in the state's budget process to benefit agencies across the state of North Carolina. Now, we went ahead here in the short session and we put some very, and I emphasize very basic elements into a pilot, looking at development criteria, and applied them to a few projects that were in the short session. And I'm going to let Sarah Porper, excuse me, describe the pilot prioritization work and where we are with it. So Sarah, sorry for butchering your name there for a second, but I'm a little tongue-tied.
People have butchered it much worse than that, so no worries. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. This is near and dear to my heart because I spent the first part of my state career at the budget office and then moved over to DIT, and know how important it is to get these two groups and the finance and IT teams across the state to work closely together. So Director Perouse, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to work with your team. As we all know, IT projects are often large and complicated. They impact agency operations, they impact the way we interact with constituents, and they're large in dollar and small in dollar. And we pay a lot of attention to some of the bigger projects, but sometimes we don't focus on the smaller ones. And as Rob can attest, sometimes the smaller ones are the ones we need to focus on from a security perspective. So we piloted with the budget office to essentially get involved in the project process a little bit earlier. So what I mean by that is, we all know that in law, we have all kinds of oversight responsibilities around major IT initiatives, but decisions are often made before the state CIO gets involved in the process. The earlier we get involved, the more influence we can have, and the earlier we get involved, the more help we can provide both the state and individual agencies. So with that in mind, we partnered to create a pilot program that would help us and help this budget office inform IT investment find opportunities for economies of scale and duplication, which is something we've been working on for a really long time, and hard to move that needle if you're not involved early and often. And then ensure that we have sound IT projects for the money that we're spending. Next slide. To do that, we focused on 4 key areas. We created questions for the pilot that revolved around strategic alignment. So is this aligned with your agency's strategic goals? Is it aligned with the governor's priorities? Is it aligned with the state CIO's IT direction for the state? And then we looked at value proposition, things like, is there a return on investment? How will this impact the citizen? How much money will we potentially lose from a federal funding perspective or other funding perspective if we don't pursue? And then risk, what is the risk of doing it? What is the risk of not doing it? Have we considered the risk when this request was put in place? And then lastly, solution approach. Is it a sound approach? Is it directionally correct with IT across the state? Are there ways that we can leverage other solutions? That sort of thing. Next slide. Late last year, we started working with the budget office to create a survey that had IT specific questions that focused on those 4 areas. We presented those new survey questions to the CIOs and then at the beginning of the year, I think. And then when the budget process started, we started working with a set of subject matter experts at DIT, ranging from people who understand architecture or security or data or strategy or project management in general, and then analysts at OSBM to review the requests. To date, we reviewed 30 plus requests from 10 agencies. We're still receiving requests from some agencies, and we'll continue to work on those. Next slide. I think, yeah, I don't have any more slides, so that makes it easy. But we're really excited. We've tons of lessons learned. We've seen situations where CIOs were not aware of expansion items. We were seeing situations where agencies submitted expansion items but didn't acknowledge or recognize that they were IT related. So we've seen repair and renovation asks that are largely IT and have security implications. So and we found situations where we could, in fact, work collaboratively across multiple agencies and have some requests work more effectively for everybody. So we're excited to work on this pilot. We're also excited to take the lessons learned and work with you guys. So please volunteer to be on this committee, please, please, because I think this is an opportunity for us, the board, and for the IT community at large to have a much larger impact earlier in the process on how we budget IT. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. And to reiterate some of the things, we started working with Charlie and his team at the beginning of December timeframe. And we really looked at the short session as an opportunity to, do some small things, learn what worked well, what didn't work well, what did we need to improve upon, and to begin to mature that process. And hopefully, as we get into the next upcoming long session, we'd be able to expand a little bit better and be in a better position to potentially ask more refined, focused questions to help us move forward in the overall prioritization process. And again, I want to stress prioritization. We all know that there are certain projects that just need to get done, and return on investment is not necessarily a key factor. We are in government. We also know there are projects that are funded in unique ways. I'll just use that terminology, and it doesn't, we just got to let them go ahead and proceed. So again, it's really looking at putting together criteria, the weighting of that criteria, so we have a uniform approach as we go ahead and assess incoming projects. And we really thought the short session, with the delay and the budget occurring as it did, that the short session, there may not be that many asks, so it allow us an opportunity to really hone in. I think we were a little overwhelmed with the number of projects. Would you say, Sarah, 30? I think we weren't expecting that many. So again, lesson learned. But as we continue to move forward, again, we want to thank our partners and colleagues at OSBM for working with us on this. And again, we had some system limitations too from the way our OSBM colleagues go out and collect this data. So they gave us all the flexibility they could, but we could not ask everything that we probably wanted to ask because of that. Hopefully, as we refine the process, we'll get to a place then where we might be able to incrementally improve the overall process and add some more clarifying type questions to get to better outcomes. So as Sarah said, if you're interested in being a part of this committee, please reach out to her, reach out to me, let us know of your interest. We will gladly take any and all who want to participate in this. And go ahead and start doing some great work here so we can be better positioned to work with our OSBM colleagues as we look at the upcoming long session down the road. Cherie, I see you're back on screen, so I want to give you an opportunity here if there's anything you would like to say to the ITSB and your new role as Chief Privacy Officer.
Sure. Thank you so much. Apologies for the delay. So it's wonderful to see everybody virtually. And I guess I want to just talk a little bit about what I have started to do and what the overall plan is for privacy. So the plan for the privacy program is that we're basing it off of the Fair Information Practice Principles, which some of you are really tired of hearing me talk about, but they're very important. They're incorporated into the NIST guidance, and they underpin all of the privacy laws that we see around the world. So not just in the States, not even just the Privacy Act of 1974, but Europe, Asia, everywhere. And that they are transparency, individual participation, purpose specification, data minimization, use limitation, data quality and integrity, security, accountability, and auditing. And I'm sure even though that was like a boring long list, you can recognize that it all has a big impact on IT and on the decisions that we make. So what we're looking to do is incorporate privacy by design so that at the beginning of every project and everything that we do, we think about what we need to be considering as it relates to privacy, as it relates to how we're going to use the data responsibly. And the baseline that I use for that is that when you think about how we should be dealing with privacy and people's data, we should think about how would we want our own data to be handled? What have we proposed in our law that if the law were passed, and what have we seen everywhere else? So what we're seeing now is each individual state, is almost all the states have either attempted to or are moving forward with privacy laws. We can expect that in the next 5 years, we'll see many more, and we just saw Utah. And what we expect to see is by like year 5 or 6, we'll have a national privacy law. So we're building towards a goal of what we're going to have to do anyway. And I feel like for us, we have the opportunity to be the number one, right? To set the standard of how it should be done, to merge what is a focus on consumer rights with also the needs of business, but to do it in a responsible way and to do it in a way that makes the people of our state feel confident to have their data with us and to allow us to use it to move everything forward, to move forward innovation, to move forward things with education, and to make it overall better. And I really feel that this is the way that we can lead with it. This is my goal for it, but I am also actively soliciting input from others to figure out where we have gaps, to figure out what additional areas I should be focused on that maybe I haven't yet thought of. I'm in the process of creating training. So we're going to have training like a Privacy 101. We're also going to have role-based training. I think it's also important to have training for specific areas to understand how privacy fits into operations, right? So like how should privacy be incorporated into procurement? How should it be incorporated into vendor management, risk assessment? So privacy is a component of the overall risk management framework. I feel like we get short shrift because security is the biggest focus, but it's an important one. And in many ways, it doesn't lend itself to the sort of automation or standardization that cyber does. So I won't chew up all the time here, but I really thank you for letting me come in and talk. I could talk about this forever. I think it's such an important topic, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this administration. So thank you.
Jim, you're muted.
But I'm sure you're saying incredible things.
That's
Yes,
true.
I just put $10 in the jar myself. I was saying that I should note that Cherie is also a published author on privacy as well. And I jokingly said to her, as she's currently writing her second book, her first status report she gave me, I thought it was a chapter out of the book. It was very detailed and comprehensive. But we're very, very fortunate to have Cherie on board. As you can see, the passion, the energy, the knowledge of privacy, both at a federal level, likewise is going to be extremely beneficial to us here in the state of North Carolina. And so looking to get see great things continue to come out of our fledgling privacy office, but we'll get there, and it's going to grow. So on that end, as I said, we would have probably transitioned to a broadband discussion, but with Nate on his way to New Orleans, and Angie Bailey had some other commitments this morning as well. We'll go ahead and get them rescheduled for a later time, to include making them available at each of the subcommittee meetings to provide a broadband update. The good news there is we're in the process of making a formal employment offer to an individual to head up our digital equity work. We're extremely excited, and hopefully we can get that done. And then Nate would be able to actually have the key members of his team from a broadband and then from a digital equity literacy aspect together to give you all a comprehensive overview as we move forward with our broadband efforts in the state. But with that, we're going to go ahead and transition to a quick legislative update. So happy Lee Jackson, our Legislative Affairs Director. Lee, take it away.
Uh-oh.
Is that saying that we have the legislature's not doing anything?
I was trying to get unmuted, so hopefully everybody can hear me now. Looked like it was stuck on mute, but so just a quick run through of the schedule. We are, like Jim said, we're taking the short session as an opportunity to have some important conversations about laying groundwork for bigger and more fine-tuned asks for long session. We anticipate this to be a very short session. So on Monday, members are going to come back for from the 4th through the 6th, and then they will adjourn again until May. Come back again May 4th, 5th, and 6th for some small business. We had originally anticipated potentially having a JLOC meeting, Joint Legislative Oversight Committee meeting on IT during those small windows, and we have since gotten confirmation that is likely not going to happen. But we had anticipated that because we're so close to when session begins. So we've been operating as if that were not to have happened. And some of you may remember we've been in this situation before where an IT oversight or IT JLOC meeting has not been scheduled. So that's not uncommon for us. And so then we will look for short session to begin on May 18th. I believe that's a Wednesday. And then they will adjourn for session on June 20th. So again, very short session. There's a potential for an IT appropriations meeting we've heard to get scheduled once session begins. So we'll be on the lookout for that. And I think that's all we've got as far as legislative information for y'all this time.
Okay. Any questions of Lee before we move on? Okay. Thank you, Lee.
Yes, sir.
Now we're going to move into the preview of tomorrow night's game. So we're going to have Duke versus North Carolina. And not that I'm rooting for one team over the other, but D does come before U or N. So Tracy, why don't you take us away and tell us why Duke's going to win the national title?
Well, first of all, I'll say that I need my voice, right, to cheer for the team. And so I do want to thank and acknowledge a couple of my colleagues who have agreed that in the aftermath of my cold and until it gets gone within the next 24 hours, that they will step in and give an overview. So Keith Briggs is going to be first up, and then we'll transition a couple of slides in to Tina. And I apologize and thank you all for your indulgence. But again, I know my priority needs to be on being able to cheer for the team. So on to Keith Briggs. Thanks, Keith.
Morning, everyone. Who would have known when we picked our committee chairs, our two committee chairs, that one would be Duke and one would be UNC, and then actually get into kind of an early prognostication of the future Saturday. That's pretty good. So, I don't know if you guys are hearing me, but once again, just like
We're not hearing you now, Keith, if you're talking. You look to be muted as well. At least it's showing muted on the screen.
Yeah,
I think-
we were hearing you for a second there, Keith, and then we lost you. So if there was
He-
something you did, there you go.
Yep,
There you
he
go,
was
you're all-
double muted.
Now you're
You're muted again.
It's toggling.
not-
now
a
you're
little
all. Yeah.
Teams is, if you're hearing me, Teams is not working very well. It
We can
seems
hear
to
you
be-
right now. You're good to go.
All right. Well, I'm blind to what you're seeing because my screen is dark.
Right now, it's the committee activity. So monthly meetings to monitor progress on digital transformation. Okay, Keith is leaving.
He's going to try to
So,
rejoin.
Okay.
Until Keith rejoins, I'll take one for the team and try to get you through the first slide or so, in the hopes he'll be with us in a second. We've continued as a committee to meet on a monthly basis. Some of those meetings have been formal meetings of the subcommittee talking about the specific progress and efforts and activities. Others have intermittently been sort of optional meetings where we'll get an update on a project or two for all those who can attend. So some of those have included a demo of the new NC-Gov system, which we call the Constituent Portal. When you hear us talk about that or refer to that in our progress reports, that's the new NC-Gov site, which is of course responsive in its design. So whether I come in on a laptop or on a cell phone, I get a really good user experience. So the NC-Gov Constituent Portal, those are kind of peanut butter and jelly or hand and glove, as you prefer to think of them, or Duke and Carolina, whatever way you want to think of them as tag team things. One does not exist without the other, so to speak. We've also spent time reviewing the project monitoring activities that Glenn has been very, very helpful in providing us with. They give a status of the roughly 9 major areas of effort. You might recall that we had 3 major goals in the Digital Transformation Committee. And within each of those 3 major goals, we had 3 major areas of activity. So if we think about where we are now 6 months into the period where we had identified the digital transformation roadmap. We shared it with you all late last calendar year. There was broad acceptance, interest, support for that. And so we have set that out there as the blueprint for that which should be preceded and achieved by the state. The 3 major goals that I mentioned include promoting, enabling infrastructure and systems integration, stimulating interagency coordination, and collaboration on common goals, and improving awareness of the easy to access and secure state systems for all the constituencies. For each of those three goals, you might recall we had identified three things. The first category was early focus items, items we thought needed to be in place within 6 to 18 months in order to set the stage for the rest of the items that had a longer term focus and really carried us through the 3 to 5 year kind of goal timeframe. So in each of the three areas, we have three goals, and each of the three goals have an early focus item or a couple of items. And then it has longer term focus items as a second category, and areas to mitigate what we perceive to be the risks associated with achieving any of those goals. So what we've done here in our roadmap progress is specifically focus on what we'd identified in the digital transformation roadmap early focus items and give a sense of the extent to which we're well along on items that would occur over the next 6 to 18 months, or whether we're started but not quite as well as long as we would hope, or whether we haven't progressed as far as might have been desired. And in that last category, or in the last two categories, what might be the issues that are holding us back? I want to say at the outset that we've been really impressed with the DIT staff and the way in which they have come at this project and conveyed the realistic and objective sense of the status. We do note that in several cases, digital transformation is a new area, a new program, and for that reason does not have historic and legacy personnel resources associated with its delivery. And therefore, we find as a committee that some of the areas that we had hoped might have been green or even yellow have remained red in even those near-term early focus items. But we attribute that to not be a matter of a lack of will, a lack of interest, a lack of commitment. We've seen amazing commitment from the team to stretch their resources as far as they can, but rather likely to be issues around resources in particular. And also one area where we see as still needing more focus and emphasis is establishing interagency cooperation. We find that there are efforts that the team is quick and good to get the technology underpinnings into place, but what we still need are the agency cooperation to make that a successful effort. As we sometimes say in the technology world, technology's easy, people are difficult. And this is exactly the case where unless we've got the people on board, those projects we seek to deliver may not have the success we need. So I'm gonna, if we go to the next slide, I think I get to turn things over.
You get to turn
Tina
things to me.
just before my coughing attack. Thanks, Tina.
No worries. Thanks so much. So good morning, everyone. A couple of things. It would not be a great report unless, as Tracy had mentioned, we do a red, yellow, green. So in the spirit of IT, we wanted to show you where we are making great progress, where we have a little bit of pause points, and as well where we do have some things that are red. So as an update, promoting and enabling infrastructure and system integration, this is not an easy task, and it's not an easy task as there is technical debt, there is common digital identity, there is a lot of things hitting at once and how to be on track for it. So source solution for a common digital identity. As you note, that's in yellow. Identity systems of record for data types. Piloting, again, as we've talked about, the business one-stop within the Constitutional Portal. Biz one-stop is just starting. So not enough information yet, but we are getting there. Policy ID, system of record, shared vision, early adopters, and dedicated resources. We're going to talk more about that. But again, lack of resources becomes a huge issue on this one. And map of ecosystem of solutions toward a common approach. starting with the pay it system. Mitigations from the DT roadmap are not quite in place. We need to vet and establish a new governance body within 90 days together with the agency CIOs. So we're just letting you know there is opportunities, but again, as we have a lot of things going on at once, we're watching to say it's a lot going on at once and it may not meet every timeline as established. So that's really the key to that slide.
Hey, Tina, as you go to the next slide, you mentioned technical debt. That's a well-known phrase for us in the IT space. I don't know how broadly it may be for everybody on the call, but may be useful to say a word about what that is and why that can be so difficult for us.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. So technical debt just means that you have antiquated systems or systems that aren't quite keeping up with the technology. And what I mean is servers that are out of life, and it's costing more to protect that server than it would be to replace a server, for instance. However, it's not easy to replace a server and sometimes an entire system, that there are vulnerabilities and it could be a little more open to hacking. So when we look at technical debt, that is really what we're looking at. Was there a question?
I just think somebody's whispering in the background there.
Got it. Hopefully it's not whispering to any of the, known vulnerabilities. So as we look at the stimulating the interagency coordination and collaboration to a common solution, a couple of points on this that we wanted to reiterate. Evaluate the digital driver's license as a quick win for common standards. So again, pay at IT standard established and being discussed. Mitigations from the DT roadmap are not quite in place yet. So getting that collaboration and cooperation between those interagencies, that's really what is going to be needed to ensure this really catapults and gets back on track a little faster. A maturity assessment, that's another one. If you notice, we have DPI, DHHS, Commerce, again, lots of people included on that one. But the problem is it's a long-term effort. We have resource gaps, and that's going to hinder the project on this one. So we need dedicated project managers. We need dedicated business analysts, system analysts. All is needed in order to really move this forward and move it forward quickly. So it just depends on the priority of where this is versus anything else. However, when you look at it from a maturity assessment standpoint, this flows into every other project that everyone has mentioned, whether it is data, whether it is cybersecurity, whether it is privacy versus personalization. All of this is table stakes, and we need that assessment completed all the way across. So this is a watch item that is red and, as I like to say, turning purple at the rate we're going, as well as deferring initial programs with local government until progress is made. Again, same thing. We just have resource gaps. And I realize that's not an easy solve, but we did want to highlight that as one of the issues that we're seeing. And I'll pause to see if there's any questions on that. All right, we'll keep going. Again, the next slide talks about establishing the roadmap and features and timelines. Communication campaign is still pending. We do have early coordination, but again, it's red because we are behind on that one. Inventory state system data on citizens, again, we're a little bit red because of the resource gap is really hindering, catapulting that. And we need to get a lot of things underway, but again, without the resources, it's hard to get started on that. However, there is green on this slide, and that's the continued efforts to secure the DIT systems and partner with DHHS on protecting privacy data, private data. Really good progress on that. So just wanted to check and say we did have one thing in green that we did want to share. And again, as stated above, it's really the resources that are hindering a little bit of where we really need to lean in on. Any questions on that? I don't think it's anything new. All right, I'm going to keep going. Anne couldn't join, so I will ask Tracy if there's anything I'm missing. You just pepper in. I just got a heads up from her. So legislative needs for the long session. Again, dedicated resources, a chief DT officer. These are things that as we look at it, that we're saying, have we thought about it? Could we get this done? And how could we help ensure that we are able to catapult this forward? Communication needed to promote digital transformation as well. Leverage all available resources. We have a lot of resources, and I think we need to start utilizing them in such a way to promote that digital transformation. And a governance needed to achieve digital transformation. Collaboration has been slow to develop. We really need strong partners to lean in and help, as well as interagency adoption. Otherwise, it's going to be a limited impact that we're going to be able to have. And then we need to leverage the opportunity with the chief data officers to build that data governance, build around alignment and exposure, build around, again, back to that privacy that we are looking for in order to ensure that all the data is safe. But until we understand the full landscape, that's going to be a gap that we're seeing. So again, if we could really start looking towards how do we get the dedicated resources, that's really going to be a differentiation, and how to get people working together for a common goal.
Hey, Tina, if I could chime in just for a second on this
Oh,
slide.
absolutely.
Yeah, I would just highlight, we had a really good conversation with Jim a couple of times in the last 2 months around this first point. How do we, as the Digital Transformation Committee, help Jim and support his activities to be ready for the legislative long session? We are ready to do that. The first thing we are working on is over the next month or two, coming in, getting into view the experiences we've had to do this top bullet, right? What's the estimated number or size of the people, the process that it would take to do the digital transformation that's aligned. So this becomes really essential for us. I also, though, want to stress the second and third are essential. We can't have this be one of those we built it but nobody used it kind of things. And so the key there is both the governance and the communication to bring others on board. We have defined a very starting vision and roadmap, but we really need to be ready to augment that with the input and the feedback from the various agencies. And so starting to have those meetings and conversations is essential early on in the process. So that's why we highlight both these so significantly.
And then I would say once we come back to, the question will become, really it becomes that prioritization, right? As we look through it, here's what we've come up with. How do we look at it from what's going to make sense? How do we fund? And then how do we turn around and drive it and do it in a way that's really going to, as Tracy said, capture the hearts and minds? People are really, even today, they still want a value system and a mission as to what they're going to attach to. So how do we make sure their hearts and minds are there to adopt it quickly? And next steps. We do have a roadmap. Circumstances can change, and we're all going to have to be adaptable. If nothing else that COVID has taught us is we have to be adaptable and pivot as things change. Certainly we see that overseas right now with the war that's going on. So again, as things change, we will change and pivot too, but we will have the roadmap, and we will ensure that we come back with, again, as Tracy said, what's needed from our perspective. And then monitoring progress, continue to sketch it out, frame legislator ask. So we're going to come back and we're going to show from our perspective, here's what digital transformation is. And here's how the value prop is for digital transformation, what's important, why, how to communicate it, what it takes to get it done, and then how to measure it. And again, as we come back, we'll talk about, again, that technical debt what's the most important first? And I think a lot of times when people talk about digital transformation, the first step is the hardest, because it's not that we don't need it, it's what to do first as we look at it. So we'll come back with those recommendations based on experience just in our industry, based on working back in different government sectors, and then based on what we see going forward that we're going to be able to really lean in and help with as well. Tracy, did I miss anything? I know I'm trying to protect your voice, but did I miss anything?
No, I appreciate that. The only thing I would add on this slide to punctuate and amplify what you said, Tina, is this notion of what is digital transformation. We recognize that this is very much an IT term. And so our work in the next couple of months will involve how we define that in regular language, real people language, so that as Tina describes, kind of winning the hearts and minds, that includes an understanding of what we're talking about that isn't so steeped in IT that it's difficult for people. Thank you, Tina.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tracy. And I think that is probably one of the biggest points. We live, sleep, and breathe IT. We live, sleep, and breathe anything that goes down. As I like to say, when it goes down, I have to get up. But how to do it in such a way that people can understand it in a second. And they understand it from a pain point perspective, that if we don't do X, Y is going to happen. And we're able to articulate that into such a way that people can understand it, grasp it, and then feel the need to be propelled to do it.
Okay, I'll cut in here. So thank you all very much for this. It's interesting that, you know, Susan Kellogg and I spent a couple of days out in Salt Lake City earlier this week with a number of our colleagues around the country, both at the local level and the state level. And as you can imagine, digital transformation was a very hot topic. And to your point about what is digital transformation, it went the full range of spectrum, depending upon what your role and what level of government you were at versus all the bunch of other things. You start talking about identity and a lot of things that you all have been discussing. It becomes very quickly, I don't want to say overwhelming, but it was quite an interesting conversation that unfortunately, because of our agenda, we probably could have spent a half a day talking about it, and we had about an hour and 10 minutes, and we had to move on to some other topics. But let me just real quick talk about resources. And I appreciate the team bringing up the resource constraint issue. And we know we're resource challenged. We openly admit it. There are things here in our short session asked that we're looking to start addressing the financial model of DIT as an agency, one of which is really freeing up our people from being assigned to a book of business, if you will, and basically enabling us to begin to move people where we need people and invest in those areas that we need to invest in, and maybe start to deprecate some other services and move people away from that. So there's a number of things in the short session. I like to, as I told the fiscal research staff yesterday, it's kind of like the opening moves of the chess game that we have to get done. I can't wait to the long session to have some of these things occur, but rest assured, when we come to the long session, we're going to have some more formal asks, and this will be one of the areas that we're addressing. And when I did talk to Tracy and the team about that, you know, we recognize the limitations we have right now, and our team is stretched every which way. They're kind of like Stretch Armstrong a little bit. But at the end of the time, I also had some, I hate to say, other priorities. I had to get those opening chess moves. So we're going to kind of address the resource constraints in the long session. And we appreciate the committee's willingness to help us out with those conversations, especially within the General Assembly. But when we get back to project prioritization, I think it's also interesting to note that you all brought up Business One Stop and the Secretary of State's office. As we began to start doing this project prioritization, one of the 30 projects submitted was from the Secretary of State to start looking at doing a Business One Stop Shop. And so this now, the prioritization coupled with digital transformation is giving us possibly an opportunity to collaborate and do some things a little bit differently with the Secretary of State's office. And maybe that's a way for us to begin to move forward with some of the digital transformation activities as it relates to the business side of the state's activities. So we're looking forward to that as well. So I want to thank you all. Tracy, I hope your voice recovers and that you can yell your head off on Monday. and with that, the chairman of the North Carolina basketball team, oh, there he's back. We're going to go over now to the Tar Heel side of the committee meeting. And Jeff, take it away, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Just so you know, I'm not totally biased. So having done my exec ed and finance at Duke.
So you're a true politician, Jeff, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Love both sides. Well, I'm talking about that. First thing I want to personally and for our group, thank the governor for his work on through the executive order to create the Joint Task Force, Cybersecurity Task Force. That's just an amazing effort to happen so quickly. And I know the governor stated publicly he's not biased on Saturday night's outcome, but given the fact that he's a double Tar Heel undergrad in law school and a Moorhead scholar, I'm guessing he's a little biased. But anyway.
I'm pretty sure he has the Carolina blue ties as opposed to the Duke color ties. Just saying.
Well, he's wearing yesterday, I think, at the press conference, a dark blue and sky blue, Carolina blue tie. So he has really got it down. Quickly, though, for our staff, and you can see the membership, I do want to welcome 2 new people who are going to be joining our group from Homeland Security. One is going to be Tom McGrath, who's the Deputy Homeland Security Chief, and Bo Trimbo, who is the Assistant Director. That is just magnificent that they feel that our efforts and work is important enough. And again, all the CISOs who participate in our monthly meetings and work sessions has been just fantastic. Before I jump into our stuff, though, I did want to just throw some things on the record, just that we get to at some point, and maybe it's in that committee, really addressing the things from Sarah's conversation this morning. And not to go through, these are not rhetorical either, but it's just placeholders that if we cover at some point in the future, it would be interesting if we have a mechanism to identify where we have duplicative efforts, both in project initiatives and or funding across agencies and departments. An example was we had that recently with DPI and DIT. There was basically the same kind of pilot initiative going on. How do we identify those, combine those, minimize those? Curious, I know some of the larger initiatives when we've done it historically, NC Tracks, NC Fast out of DHHS, Tim's project out of DOR, the whole recent ERP effort through the controller's office, things that are either large complex projects and or cross agencies. Have we, and where are we in a permanent structure that would be like a statewide EMPO? I know it exists relative to doing the ERP, but how do we empower it to be the delivery mechanism across agencies?
So Jeff, I'll just interject there. That's exactly what we're trying to create.
Okay.
And so when you look at what my focus areas are going to be, it's going to be less on an operational componentry, if you will, which is what historically DIT has been focused on.
Sure.
Which is only a small portion of the 33 statutory requirements that we're supposed to be performing as an agency. We're going to start that subtle shift over into more of a focus around strategy, around enterprise governance, around program management. I'm not going to even say project management, program management, enterprise architecture, and then equally important, portfolio management. And that's really where I'm looking to invest very heavily in from a staffing aspect as well. And I have a lot of smart people that work in the organization, but they're currently today tied to a book of business or a revenue stream. And that's what I got to get fixed. I got to get those people freed from that revenue stream, get moved over so we can start putting our folks where we will get the most value. And again, as you start thinking about a transition to cloud and what the cloud can offer us, it's to make sure our people are going to be successful in that transition as well. That's our most valuable commodity that we have. You know, servers don't install themselves and rack themselves, and all people do those things, right? So we got to make sure that we're taking care of the people aspect in the organization. So that's really what my short session focus is really around. To
and
be
that's
candid.
the body through relationships, whatever, maybe part of our charter is how do we help you advance those initiatives and causes. The other quick couple things, briefly before we jump back into the cyber side is, as we get and the ability to identify overlapping projects and initiatives, and as you said, those 30 would be interesting, but is the ability to get a copy of each department and agency strategic information systems plans. The last, I don't know if there's any other individual, but I had all of them at one point, but it was 6 years ago. So I'm sure they've possibly changed a little bit. But I think that gives us an ability to glean through those directions and visions for each department, and again, figure out where there's overlap. And then the last thing, which I think is really important, both from Lee's perspective and from Sherry's perspective, is as we get into the data privacy / cybersecurity, is to be able to somehow through our group to leverage into the NCSL. Because that body nationally is bipartisan, and that would be a great resource to glean legislation that we can use as a roadmap, a foundation, a starting point that we might want to use as we go forward. So that was just some background. So with that, we've been meeting on a monthly basis on the Cybersecurity Committee. Over the last year, we've really crafted 4 position statements on 4 program initiatives, which they're in front of you. And what I'm going to do is turn this over to Rob to introduce the folks. And I don't know if it'll be Patrick and Keith that'll be talking about each of them, but our number one objective going forward in the coming year is to map out how we operationalize and bring these programs to life now that we've created the vision. So with that, Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce folks.
Hey, Jeff, thank you very much. And fellow committee members, I just want to point out that NC State is currently in crouching tiger mode, holding down the 15th spot in the ACC. So let's not forget that, all my Wolfpack fans. According to the agenda, we're going to start with our cyber pathways discussion, or excuse me, our cyber education pathways discussion. And in doing so, I'd like to introduce the CIO for the UNC Systems Office, Keith Werner, to the group, as well as Patrick Fleming, the CIO for the North Carolina Community Colleges System. Patrick and Keith, I turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Patrick, do you want to run through this?
Yeah, we can walk through it. Thank you so very much, team. I really appreciate the opportunity. And as Jeff was speaking, we've got some great opportunities in the cybersecurity education pathways effort here. And kind of following along with what I've heard discussed today, Secretary Weaver started off, with the challenges in cybersecurity. It's a global item impacting almost every aspect of the work that we do. And that is no question a daunting shadow, right? It's incredibly difficult to be prepared. It's incredibly difficult with the response efforts and then remediation and then getting back to normal when bad things happen in the technology world. And it's difficult to understand. And so we all can agree that we have gaps in credentialed, certified, skilled staff members, or hopefully future staff members, to fill the need to help us in this constant battle we have securing our information technology. Another comment that I heard today is some of the struggles we have working together on a common goal. And Keith and I have been putting pen to paper here to understand the best way forward in filling this hiring need in North Carolina. And this is one of those rare opportunities where in technology, where this is actually encouraging, it is established, and we can see a clear pathway to success. And to jump into the slide here, we were looking to get a very clear mission statement, and quite bluntly, we're going to team up, partner up between the community college system and the UNC system and Department of Information Technology, and we're going to leverage those strengths and what we have in place in our higher education with the state and continue to drive that effort, right, through education, internships, apprenticeships, and focusing on that full-time employment within North Carolina, and using our public and private sector relationships and partnerships to make this a reality. So if we could bump over to the next slide. And this is critical. And as Jeff mentioned, getting to operational as quickly as possible. And so Keith and I were working on some goals that we feel are quickly attainable. And our focus is identifying what we're currently doing and then where those gaps are to meet the higher education needs to produce these credentialed cybersecurity professionals. And working down with those public and private sector partnerships. And the key part here with goal number 3, really what we're looking at here is marketing and communications. One of the biggest struggles that we have at the community college system is getting the word out that the great 58, our 58 community college systems in North Carolina, or colleges in North Carolina, what they have to offer, both to their local community and with the online learning opportunities that we have that really can be taken advantage of throughout the state and throughout the country. And then establishing a state level program governance for the cyber education pathway program. And then the key here is outcomes and creating those metrics to understand the good work that we are doing. And I can't say it enough, from the research that I've done just within the community college system, we have well-established programs. Secretary Weaver mentioned a couple of meetings ago about going down to Fayetteville Technical Community College and their cyber defense education center. This is real, right? This exists today. They are recruiting, they're enrolling, they are educating, and they are producing the types of people and talent that we need to succeed with our cybersecurity efforts. On the UNC system side, UNCW has recently unveiled a new cybersecurity and intelligence systems engineering program. And while these are just 2 examples of FATEC and UNCW, what we've discovered is we're pretty deep with these opportunities in the UNC system and the community college system. Keith and I are focused on creating the team to be able to surface a lot of that good work that's being done, and then really focus on where we are today, the gaps that we have, and I see that as the big ticket item as far as when you think about a legislative ask or how we're going to cover these gaps, and then just continuing to report out, right, on those outcomes. Keith, you want to fill in some of the gaps here?
Patrick, I think you've hit it perfectly. I would just add that we want this to be as seamless as possible, right? So actually creating a pathway that's very easily understood, going from the community colleges to a university system program. Patrick mentioned Wilmington. We have several bachelor programs. We have several graduate programs that are in flight, online programs, as well as certificates on the UNC side. So Patrick and I've scurried up a team. I know Patrick has on his side. Our next step, I think, is getting these 2 teams together and figuring out how that seamless transition works. So that's kind of where we are in the process.
It's simply outstanding, and it's unfortunately sometimes too rare in our day-to-day work that we have this established already. It's just exposing the good work that's done, and then of course listening to our partners and peers in the UNC system and the community college system to see where they're falling short. And I know it's going to come down to budget and talent, right? And how we make that message available. And that goes back to that communication plan as well. And so looking forward to our next report out with a little bit better information, if you will, a little bit more tangible information on the, and hopefully already hitting a few of the outcomes that Keith and I have been discussing. Any questions or comments from the group?
Yeah, I was going to say, this is an area that we really, getting our pipeline to talent. NC Tech, NC Tech has put out there already 21,000 cyber jobs are currently available today in the state of North Carolina. We know the importance of cyber here within government job levels as well. For all the wonderful things our National Guard resources do, we're also tapping the bench strength there and pushing the limits in some cases as well. So there's more than enough work to go around, and it's going to be extremely important for us to start introducing the next generation of cyber talent into what we're doing at a state and local government level. And so I'm encouraged by this program. As mentioned, I did spend some time down at Fayetteville Technical Community College. Just impressive what they're doing there, and I understand that that's pretty consistent across all our community colleges. Of course, Keith was very quick to tell me as well, hey, we're doing this over at the UNC side of the house too. So, but anyway, I want to start making availing ourselves to this talent, and how do we start incorporating these individuals more so into some of our, whether it's apprenticeships, whether, whatever it can be. Rob and I have had some conversations already about, is there a way to maybe, have some of them come out and assist us on some of the incident response activities that are occurring, and I know we've got to look at legal issues and those kind of things as to how that works, but at least at Fayetteville Tech, they're willing to have that conversation to see how they can incorporate some real world scenarios into what they're educating the individuals on down there at their own campus to get us that well-rounded, holistic individual. So again, we have the talent here in our backyard. They're getting produced, they're getting generated. Obviously down in Fayetteville, it's a military community vibe. 60% of the folks in the programs are minorities, which would really help us with our, if you look at the fact that we should be representative of our state demographics, and definitely pulling in cyber talent across all racial subdivisions would be a huge win for all of us as well. So again, there's so many pluses that can come out of this. And so I thank you all for your efforts on this. And if there's anything that we can do to continue to get this moving forward, and again, like I said, help augment our National Guard resources as well, because I know we are in some cases pushing the limits on our current bench strength, and there are other real world missions that the Guard needs to tend to as well. So we also got to make sure that we have the bench there to help out when needed. So thanks, gang.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you, Patrick. Excellent presentation. Very excited about the possibilities of this pathway coming to life. So thank you, gentlemen. I want to unpack Executive Order 254 for just a moment for those attendees to this event, and give more insight into how that executive order came to life and what its intention is. So EO 254, signed on the 16th of March, has two major sections. The first of which is the formalization of the Joint Cybersecurity Task Force. And the second are some areas of strong encouragement to our critical infrastructure and key resources partners. I'm going to start with the formalization first and what that means to North Carolina. Prior to the 16th of March, the Joint Cybersecurity Task Force operated as an informal body that provided immediate assistance to our whole of state partners. And by whole of state, I'm referring to state agencies, local governments, K through 12s, and community colleges in responding to significant cybersecurity incidents. Another part of that informal activity that had occurred prior to the executive order was a proactive approach to cybersecurity as conducted by both the NCLG's Cybersecurity Strike Team and the North Carolina National Guard Cybersecurity Response Force. That proactivity involved outreach, communication, education, but also a major component is the security assessments and compliance assessments, to include penetration testing that the National Guard provided at no cost to local governments. Secretary Weaver had mentioned on several occasions the risks associated with resting on the assessment as being a destination. Okay, we were assessed and now we're done. So the natural follow-on piece is identifying corrective actions that need to take place and actually executing on those corrective actions. So several of our local governments who had been assessed and also have had a penetration test have also had a second assessment, and in some cases a second penetration test. Kind of like that follow-on measurement of where you were at and where you've come, where you've arrived to as a result of the corrective action steps that you've taken. So all of that proactivity and the reactive capabilities that we provided to local governments in an informal sense was really codified with Executive Order 254. I want to stop there and identify the core members of the Joint Cybersecurity Task Force and our partners, starting with the North Carolina Department of Information Technology being member number one. And this is an equal partnership among all of the members. The second member is the North Carolina Division of Emergency Management. Third is the North Carolina National Guard Cybersecurity Response Force. And fourth is the NCLGISA, stands for North Carolina Local Government Information Systems Association, Cybersecurity Strike Team. And in addition to those members, we have core partners that include, among others, the United States Secret Service, the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. As we've matured and reached the point of formalization with the JCTF, we have a unique opportunity to come alongside our critical infrastructure and key resources partners in providing critical information, critical cyber threat intelligence sharing, and potential assistance in the event that that critical infrastructure and key resources entity is subject to a significant cybersecurity incident. So the three main parts of Section 2 of the executive order start with visibility, being able to see the public-facing environment of a critical infrastructure and key resources partner. They are strongly encouraged to provide those details to the Joint Cybersecurity Task Force so we can have visibility and conduct proactive activities that partner with that critical infrastructure and key resources entity to allow them to see themselves and put another set of eyes or additional sets of eyes on those resources to ensure that they have maximum visibility into the threats that are facing them and the vulnerabilities that exist within their environments. The second major part of Section 2 is strongly encouraging those CIKR entities to report significant cybersecurity incidents similar to what our state and local agencies are required to in compliance with North Carolina General Statute 143B-1379. As the State Chief Risk Officer, obviously it's concerning when we do have a significant cybersecurity incident that's reported. What's most concerning is not knowing that an incident is going on and the vast interconnections between agencies, or both public and private, and the state of North Carolina. So getting that visibility and with strongly encouraging CIKR entities to report is an absolutely essential tool in our toolbox to being prepared to respond. And then the third major component is strongly encourage those CIKR entities to allow the JCTF to come alongside them in the event that they are subject to a significant cybersecurity incident, add our resources to the fight, and get that time to recovery extremely shortened to the extent that we're able to provide resources on the cyber battlefield. Very excited about Executive Order 254 and looking forward to all that we can accomplish there. Secretary Weaver mentioned the ability to tap into the resources, whether it be at Fayetteville Tech or other community colleges within the Carolina Cyber Network or the UNC system. So we have an opportunity here as potential next steps to create regional pools of resources, leveraging that student population within the UNC system and the Carolina Cyber Network to provide force multiplying capabilities to the JCTF. Right now, we only expect the risks to North Carolina to increase as the activities in Eastern Europe progress. And I want to be clear that there are no known direct or credible threats to North Carolina at this time, but we don't need to rest on that. We need to ensure that we have the ability to scale up in the event that activities against North Carolina significantly increase and there are impacts to our critical infrastructure. The state of Michigan has a volunteer cybersecurity corps comprised of private sector partners. That's another opportunity that we can explore as a cybersecurity subcommittee to the ITSB. I think it's worthy of exploration to see how we can approach utilizing resources from the private sector to really bring those to bear in the fight against malicious activity. I want to thank Keith Werner for the opportunity presented to the JCTF to address the UNC CIO Council and the Information Security Council on the 14th of April. I think this is going to be a great opportunity to expose the system campuses to what the Joint Cybersecurity Task Force capabilities are, and how we can partner alongside the UNC system in providing them the capabilities that might be needed in a proactive and reactive sense. So very highly excited about that opportunity, and I think it's going to be a great adventure for all involved.
Yeah, a couple things, Rob.
Yes, sir.
I think it's just important to note again that the activities that the Joint Cyber Task Force works on are at no cost to the entity that they're serving or servicing. So it's a heck of a resource that's available to all of government in North Carolina to take advantage of. But again, we have to be careful about, you become a victim of your success. So we have to make sure that we have that talent pipeline, and we're able to make sure that we're not burning out those resources because of how good they are. And then secondly, to get off the team session at the end of the ITSB, Rob will have a 3-question quiz for you on the executive order. And if you don't pass it, you're stuck listening to Rob talk about it again.
Now it has been noted in previous executive leadership team meetings or senior leadership team meetings that there's an over/under on the number of times I'll say JCTF or Joint Cybersecurity Task Force. So I'm just going to leave that right there. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this body and its capabilities, and I thank Secretary Weaver, Secretary Buffalo, the National Guard, and the Interagency body for everything that we bring to bear for the JCTF in the state of North Carolina.
And for the record on that, Nate Denny won the over/under bid. I had Rob saying it at least 9 times, and he did not get there. So go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We're involved as the JCTF in a number of different engagement at this point, one with the higher education institution and one with the local government, among others. So we're very active, and we're poised to respond to the threat landscape as it evolves with the situation in Europe or other cyber actors or advanced persistent threat actors worldwide. Now, I'm going to pivot into an overview of the activity or the threat landscape for February of this year. And if you bear with me, I'm going to transition over to my internal notes. So it was a busy month. We have a number of different areas that we observe and monitor for supported state agencies within our DIT SOC. I want to call out that activities to our public-facing environment, the number of security events. Now, I want to distinguish events from incidents. Events are simply the observation of an attempt to access a resource. So the number of events observed just across our public-facing web presence for the state of North Carolina, otherwise known as our digital commons environment, equaled 2.7 million events in February alone. 2.7 million. The number of total malicious emails that were processed through our tenant equals 614,000, and they vary from virulent messages to phishing and spam. Now, I want to dig into or spend a moment on a malicious email for just a couple of minutes, because email is the most common vector of attack to public and private sector entities. Of the malicious email that was received through our tenant, there's a number of broad categories that are tracked, one of which is confirmed security incident. In other words, the message had a virulent payload, a malicious link, or had a business email compromise component to it. That comprised over half of all the emails. That category comprised over half of all the malicious emails that we received in the month of February. Now, I want to jump across to the intrusion prevention services that we provide to county governments. We have recently purchased additional intrusion prevention services devices known as iSensors, and we're actively engaging local governments to deploy this capability, targeting primarily Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties. This is a proactive outreach that has been accomplished through a number of different ways, direct engagement from my office, our Interagency cybersecurity strike team being our subject matter expertise within local governments. They've performed outreach as well, in addition to the National Guard as they're performing proactive services for counties such as those security and compliance assessments and penetration testing. As they're engaging local governments, they'll mention this as a capability that can be provided to the local government at no cost to the local government itself. I'm going to stop there. Does anybody have any questions so far about what I've offered? All right. I'm going to jump into the types of activity that we've seen for the month of February. Now, we had a significant uptick in December broadly, and mostly it was resulting in attempted command and control activities by malicious actors and malware. As we move into the month of February, 2 months later, our top category is, once again, a command and control malware that has seen an uptick from the previous month. Finally, I'm going to shift over and have a broad discussion on the types of blocking that we have seen within our intrusion prevention service that we have embedded within our enterprise operations. In February alone, there were 712 million different unique attacks attempted against the North Carolina critical infrastructure within state government. Of those, those are 712 unique, 712.9 million unique attackers. There were over 967 million blocks that met a rule on our blacklist that said, thou shalt block this. So it's been a very busy past couple of months. We're poised to respond. I've been asked in a number of different venues. Is North Carolina ready for the Russians? Well, we're ready to protect North Carolina against a wide variety of threats that face us on a minute-by-minute basis. Jeff, I'm going to pause there. That concludes the operational part of what I had to offer this morning, and I stand by for questions.
I think it's just important to note that when we talk about cyber, take it from a military aspect, when you know who you're fighting against, there's certain doctrinal stuff that they will do consistently. We don't necessarily have that advantage on the cyber front because you're not sure who the enemy is, quote unquote, that you're addressing. And so, as you can see from the volume of activities, and I think March, the volume is probably going to be much higher than the February numbers that Rob mentioned. We're holding firm, we're holding fast. Are there still some things occurring within our state borders? Yes. Unfortunately, that's the case. We've probably seen more criminal related activity than anything else. But it is what it is, and it's still occurring here within our state borders. So so far so good. But as Rob always likes to say, at this time we're holding firm. The interaction and intercommunication across Rob and his colleagues across the country have been tremendous. I think that's probably been more of an invaluable resource than maybe some of the hierarchical up to the federal government back down to states through the MSISACs or fusion cells. But nonetheless, I think everyone here has bonded together to do some tremendous work. And again, the last thought is cyber is everyone's responsibility. It's not just Rob or a small team. And so it's just important that all of us do our due diligence and our due part to help keep North Carolina safe. And thank you in advance for those efforts as well. Jeff, I don't know what else you have there, sir.
I think we're good. I think the last closing comment for our side, as you can see, our committee work and the cyber work is nonstop and it's very active. We're blessed to have truly amazing talent. Is hopefully we can convey to other organizations and governmental bodies throughout the state, whether that's at the county or municipal level as well. But the vigilance is important. We know we continue to be hacked all the time, all businesses, all governmental bodies. It's not if we will, it's how often we will. But we are truly blessed to have tremendous resources and skill sets under your leadership, Mr. Secretary, and under our CISO for the state. So it's a pleasure to be involved. We learn a lot to learn and a lot to do. So thanks for having us this Friday.
Oh, no, thank you for all the great work that you're doing on this committee, and then likewise for Tracy and her committee. I think then we're ready to move on to other business, but before I do that, I think my wonderful vice chair is still on. Rocco, you still out there? I didn't know if there was anything that you may want to add, sir, or comment on.
Jim, appreciate it. I mean, obviously, tremendous work on both from both committees. I do have one question of Rob. Rob, given MCNC's sort of, I guess, serves many of the anchor institutions around the state government at many locations, where are they in the whole continuum of what you're doing with this? And are they part of one of these other groups? Because I haven't really heard their names spoken related to any of this stuff on the cyber part.
Certainly. Hey, great question, Rocco. And I appreciate you asking that. MCNC, between myself and Chris Beal out there, we are actively sharing threat intelligence as threat intelligence is made available. I know with the situation in Eastern Europe, that's been an absolutely essential component to MCNC's ability to support their customers and their ability to, and our ability to support the state of North Carolina and its security. So to your question, as we have incident response engagements that affect, their customer base, the Joint Cybersecurity Task Force and MCNC partner in response. With the recent education institution that I mentioned as being an active IR engagement, MCNC is tightly integrated and involved with those response and recovery efforts as well. So short answer to your question, Rocco, we cannot respond successfully to entities that are in that space without MCNC's partnership.
Got it. Thank you.
Anything else, sir?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and move on to other business. So do any of the board members have any other topics they want to bring up for discussion?
Secretary Weaver,
Yeah, go
I
ahead,
just
Tracy.
wanted to point out that after this meeting, you may want to revisit the recording. There was a point where you described me saving my voice for cheering on Monday. I'm sure that was a slip of tongue and you meant Saturday and not a prognostication of who would have something to cheer for. So I just point that out as something that I think could easily be addressed by your technology team here and might be prudent before it goes in the state record.
With my general counsel sitting next to me, I think that would be called altering a public record, which would not be ethical. So I don't think I have that opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
It's never the crime, it's the cover up. I get it. Okay.
I get it.
Mind.
Okay.
I withdraw my suggestion.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay, if not, we're going to go ahead then and we're going to adjourn. Again, thank you everybody for all the great work, and thank you so much again for accommodating the date change. You see on the screen there are our next meeting dates. So we'll plan accordingly for that, and hopefully then we'll have a better readout as to our success potentially within the short session, and then we can start working on those needed asks that we're going to have to make in the upcoming long session as it relates to support digital transformation. So again, thank you all. And again, please do not forget to reach out to Sarah or me if you're really interested in helping out in the project prioritization work as well. That's going to be extremely important for us as we move forward. Thank you again, and have a great rest of the day and enjoy the weekend. It's going to be interesting. Bye, everybody.
Bye.